Select all of the following expressions that represent an imaginary number. We are looking for expressions that whenever you simplify, you end up with an imaginary number. Therefore, your answer should have an I as part of it. So once you finish, your answer should have an I. Now we have two definitions that we know. The first one's given to you above, where they tell you that I to the second power is equal to -1. That is the first definition. But there's another one. If we square both sides, we end up with I to the fourth is going to be equal to +1. And that is the second definition that we'll be using. Let's go and start simplifying. Letter A. I to the 15th. So I need to think, how many I to the fourth do we have? So how many I to the fourth do I have in 15? We have 3, because 4 times 3 gives us 12. How many more do I have? I have 3 more. So I must separate them as I squared multiplied by I. We know that every I to the fourth is going to be equal to 1. So that will give me a 1. We know that I squared will give me a -1. And I still have a lonely I. So therefore, if you multiply together, that gives you -1 times I will give you -1I, or just -I. And that'll be your answer. Now, since it has an I as part of your answer, we know that this is going to be an imaginary number. And that's what we're looking for, so therefore A can be an answer. For letter B, let's go through the same process. How many I to the fourths do I have? We have 6 I to the fourth, because 4 times 6 will give us 24. How many are left? 1. I know that every I to the fourth is going to be 1. So it gives me a 1. And I still have a I left, and that's just an I. I is equal to I. This, once you simplify, 1 times I will give me 1I, or just I. And this will be my answer. I is part of my answer, so therefore this is also an imaginary number. And letter B will also be part of my answer. Let's continue to letter C. How many I to the fourth do I have in 14? We have 3 of them. That's 12. How many are left? We have 2 more. And that's it. Now, we know that every I to the fourth is going to be equal to 1. And we know that I squared is going to be equal to -1. So therefore, my answer is just -1. It does not have an I as part of my answer. There were no I's left. So your answer should not have an I. And since it doesn't have an I, then this is a real number. So therefore C is not your answer. For letter D, how many I to the fourth do we have in 20? We have 5. 5I to the fourth, that gives us 20. How many are left? None. So therefore we know that every I to the fourth is going to be equal to 1. And there's nothing left. So therefore that is your answer. It doesn't have any i's, so therefore this is going to be a real number. So therefore D is not your answer. For letter E, let's go through the same process. How many I to the fourth do we have in 19? We have 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So how many are left? We have 3 left. So therefore we're going to separate them as I squared and then an I. We know that I to the fourth is equal to 1. We know that I squared is equal to negative 1. And then I still have an I by itself. I multiply all three of them. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1 times I will give me negative 1I, or just negative I. Since my answer has an I, therefore this is going to be an imaginary number. And letter E, it's also part of your answer. So your answers are A, B, and E.